Ada Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadhana Man Nistaraka Madbhagya Madananda Namostute Hari Om Tat Sat. Chapter 18, 6th Canto. So in the beginning of the 6th Canto, Shrikadeva Goswami was giving a description of a lineage of Manus coming from the union of Kashyapa Muni and Aditi. And when he got to Twashta, that led to the whole discussion about the son of Twashta named Vitrasura and his past life with Shrutiketu. So in the beginning of this chapter, in the first passage, which is like verse 1 to verse 8, he continues that description which he started, I believe it started in chapter 4 or chapter 3 and then chapter 4, the beginning of chapter 4. He continues a description of the sons of Aditi, known as the Adityas. And that leads to discussion about great personalities like Brigu and Valmiki, and not discussion, just a mention of their appearance from Aditi's womb, and also of the appearance of Lord Brahmandev, which Shrikadeva Goswami says he will come back to elaborate on that pastime in the 8th canto. So that's the first passage, which I just glossed here. We're not going to read it. Then in the second passage, which starts from verse 10 up to verse 19, he begins giving a description of the lineage that descends from Kashyapa Muni and Diti. So these are known as the Daityas. The Daityas means the demons, which come from the union of Kashyapa Muni and Diti. In that description, we hear about her first sons, of course, who are very famous, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. We hear about Hiranyaksha's sons. He had 4 sons. We hear about that from his wife Kayadu. And then some of their children, of whom Prahlad Maharaj and Bali Maharaj are exceptional examples because they are great bhaktas of the Lord. So in the course of giving a description of the sons of Diti, known as the Daityas, he comes to this point where he says that there were these 49 sons who were born of Diti, so technically they were Daityas or demons, but later on they became Devatas by the arrangement of Indra. So this leads to a question from Parikshit Maharaj in verse number 20. How is it possible that a demon can become a devotee? Which is not dissimilar for the question that led to the whole discussion about Shrutiketu's life. How it was possible for a great demon like Vitrasura to become a great bhakta of the Lord. Demons are situated in Rajagun and Tamagun. Generally, they are averse to devotion. They are averse to the higher life of spirituality. So how it is that they become bhaktas? So this question of Parikshit Maharaj is not dissimilar. This is verse 20. My dear Lord, due to their birth, the 49 Maruts must have been obsessed with a demonic mentality. Generally, the mentality you have, the birth you take, if you take birth in the family of demons, it is likely that you have demonic samskaras that have led to that particular type of birth. So Krishna has mentioned this in the chapter 16 Bhagavad Gita when discussing the divine and demonic nature, Daivi Sampat, Asura Sampat, Yoga. So Daivi Sampat, of course, means divine assets, means coming from the mode of goodness. And demonic assets means coming from the mode of passion and ignorance. And Krishna says in that chapter that this nature is fixed up in one from birth. You know, devotees in ISKCON, we generally try to downplay the role of birth in a person's conditioning, but the basic idea is that if you got a certain birth, it's because you have a certain samskara that has led to that particular type of birth. So it is expected that the sons of Diti would have a demonic swabhava. So how is it that they become devatas? So Parikshit Maharaj says here, why did Indra, the king of heaven, convert them into demigods? Did they perform any rituals or pious activities? My dear Brahmana, I and all the sages present with me are eager to know about this. Therefore, Grace Soul kindly explain to us the reason. So the Bhagavatam wants to zoom in on this particular personality in the lineage, the Maruts. We'll see from the end of the discussion how it fits in with the general theme of the sixth canto, which is Poshanam. Again, the word Poshanam is one of the 10 topics of the Bhagavatam. It literally means nourishment, but it specifically refers to how the Lord nourishes and maintains his bhaktas who are struggling in a psychophysical dimension, and how they receive grace, and despite their circumstances and reverses in life, they come out on top. They come out with bhakti. Ajamil was the first story we encountered with this theme. Indra's own story, how he was disrespected his guru, but later on was favored by Vishnu despite all the nonsense. Was the second story we heard. Vitrasura and Tritaketu was the next story that we heard. So this is the general theme of the sixth canto, how the Lord nourishes devotees who are struggling in the material world. But so we'll see how this pastime in the Marus fits in with that general theme. But Parikshit Maharaj's question is setting up the groundwork for such a discussion. How is it that someone can be born of demons and become converted to the Devatas? So Shrikadeva Goswami begins to describe this. So, this is verse 22. So Sri Sudha Goswami said, O great sage Shonaka, after hearing Maharaj Parikshit speak respectfully and briefly on topics essential to hear, Shrikadeva Goswami, who was well aware of everything, praised his endeavor with great pleasure and replied. So there's nice commentary to this particular verse. Ta Vishnu Ratasya Sabha Darayanir Vacho Nisham Yadritam Alpam Artava. So Vishnu Rata is the name of Parikshit Maharaj. It means one who was protected by Vishnu, because when he was in the womb of his mother, he was literally protected by Vishnu in the womb. So he got the name Vishnu Rata. And this name of Parikshit Maharaj is very dear to him, because it reminds him always of that grace that he received while in the womb of his mother, and which ended up being the defining feature of his life, by which he received the name also Parikshita, which means to examine, because he was always examining the world in search of that person whom he saw in the womb. So this becomes a defining feature of his life. So this Vishnurata name very dear to Parikshit Maharaj. So it says here, Badarayana, so that's Shrikadeva Goswami. He was very pleased to receive the question of Parikshit Maharaj. And it says here, Vacho Nisham Yadritam Alpam Artava, that hearing these words which were offered with respect were Artavat. They were brief. Alpam means they were very brief. You know, we saw the question, it was very short. But it was Artavat. So the word Artavat means filled with many meanings there. So, of course, for us, we probably didn't catch any subtleties in the question. But from the commentaries, it seems that there were a lot of subtleties in the question. So here it says, although brief, it was filled with many meanings. Great souls often ask questions concisely, but filled with many meanings. And so here in the commentary, 3 meanings are specifically offered that we're to derive from this particular pastime that we're about to hear. The first meaning that is where our attention is drawn to by the commentators is that Diti, by tamasic bhakti, becomes purified of her tamasic intentions, which was namely murder. Well, here she wants to murder Indra for because she blames Indra for the death of her sons, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. Of course, Vishnu was the one who directly killed him, but Krishna has done that to benefit Indra. So she's taking Indra as the main cause of the death of her sons. And so she wants to murder them. That is, with that desire in her heart, she has done bhakti. So this is called tamasika bhakti. There is such a thing as tamasik bhakti, rajasic bhakti, satvika bhakti, and of course nirgun bhakti. We encounter this conception in the third canto Srimad Bhagavatam and Kapila Muni's teachings. It describes bhakti as threefold in terms of how a living entity is situated in the modes of nature and performing bhakti. And when describing the tamasic bhakti, of course, bhakti is nirguna. So what is meant by tamasic bhakti is the devotee is in tamas and performing bhakti. That is the meaning there. And his description of tamasic bhakti is as follows. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam. Abhi sandhaya yo hinksa dhamba matsaryam evava sangrampi binadrik bhavam mayi koryatsa tamasa. So one who has an intention to do violence, abhi sandhaya yo hinksa, one who has an intention to do violence like murder. Dhambam matsaryam evava samrambi, and they are informed by anger, envy, and pride. Binadrik bhavam, and their devotion is binadrik. Binadrik means endowed with a separatist vision. In the commentary, it means binadrik is taken as one who doesn't see with equality the happiness and distress of the living entities. So they take their own distress very seriously, but the distress of others, they're very peaceful. So they don't have equal vision, which means their compassion, they're basically devoid of compassion. They're selfish. This is how it's taken in the commentary. The word binadrik also comes up in the next two verses when describing Rajasika and Sattvika Bhakti. The word used there is Pritak Bhava, which means the mood of separateness also. And there the idea is that one is situated in a vision of reality separate from God. In other words, when Maya is seen, God is not seen. When the reflection of sunlight and darkness is seen, the actual sun is not seen. This is the definition of Maya. And this is what it means by separatist vision. One is not seeing God, oblivious to God as the foundation of all life and eventualities. And instead seeing everything that's happening as independent of God. And as a result of that vision of separateness, you pursue it with separate interests and so on. This has been a Drikpava. So this is the main quality that characterizes all the not Nirguna Bhakti. They're situated in this separatist vision. And in this particular one, Tamasika Bhakti, Mayi Kuryat Satamasa, you have intention to kill or do violence, and you're endowed with pride, envy, and anger. So this is called Tamasika Bhakti. So the first meaning of the story here from the commentators is that by Tamasika Bhakti, she became purified. And it means by the Bhakti part, she became purified of her tamasic tendencies. And after being purified by her tamasic tendencies, she goes on to develop a mentality suitable for liberation. So even Tamasika Bhakti is Bhakti, and it's wonderful. The Bhakti element is there. This kind of reminds one of the verse, Apicha Sudaracharo Bhajate Mama Nanya Bhak Sadhura Eva Samantavya Samyavya Vasito Hisaha. Even if my devotee does the most abominable activity, which is to say, generally my devotees aren't doing abominable activities because they're not attracted to vice or virtue of matter. But even if, Apicha, even if they're doing abominable activities, Bhajate Mama Nanya Bhak, if they're doing my bhajan exclusively, Sadhura Eva, they should be considered sadhu in all ways. Well, when they're doing bhajan, they're sadhu, but when they're not doing bhajan, they are asadhu. No, Sadhura Eva, and at all times, they should be accepted as sadhu. Even when they're not doing, sadhu things. That time also they are sadhu. Sadhura Eva, they are certainly a sadhu. Mantavya, this is my injunction. To not follow it is to transgress this injunction of mine and to be punishable. in so many ways by God. Why you say like this? This is not fair. Here I am struggling as a non-devotee to be pious, and this guy is doing nonsense, but he has bhakti. You say he should be accepted as sadhu, and I'm also criticized as sadhu because I'm not doing bhakti. Because he is situated in his determination to do bhakti. Like somehow he's hanging on to the bhakti part. That is to say that bhakti is the only really valuable thing in the material world. Everything else it had no value in the ultimate analysis because it's temporary. Nasato vidite bhavo, na bhavo vidite sata. It is here today and gone tomorrow. That is the nature of a sat. So whether your virtue or your vice, it is all a sat. So it has no ultimate value. And that which is sat, like bhakti, that is eternal. So anyone who hangs on to that, that is a meaningful part. The other parts will go away, but this part will remain. So this is the glory of even tamasika bhakti. This is one meaning to be taken. Another meaning to be taken from the story. Vacho nisham yadritam alpam artabat. What is the other meaning to be derived? So Sri Vishwanath points that Diti, as we'll see in just a second, just the first passage of her speaking, she sees faults in Indra for his bad character and so on, but she does not see those same faults in herself, which she is also possessing. So this is another meaning to be taken from the story from Sri Vishwanath's commentary. Prabhupada also, I don't know if he draws out that particular meaning. This reminds one of Ramchandra Puri. He would feed the devotees nicely. First, he would eat himself very nicely. I was just reading this pastime yesterday. He would feed himself very nicely, very nicely. And then after he would eat nicely, he would invite the devotee, you also come to eat. Then the boys would eat, and then they would take, their amount or less. And he said, no, you should take more, you should take more. And then when they would take more, then he would criticize them. Just see, I heard the followers of Mahaprabhu overeat, but now I'm directly seeing this with my own eyes. He would have this particular tactic. And this way, another point in the pastime, because he was always looking for fault. And this is because of his disrespect to his spiritual master. So Kaviraj Goswami brings that part of the story into the formula. He disrespected his guru, so he developed this duplicitous mentality. And then he would come, another time Mahaprabhu was there, he came to visit Mahaprabhu, he was always looking for fault. He was very active looking for the fault. And one time he comes to Mahaprabhu's space and he sees that there are ants crawling all over the ground. He said, aha, just see, you're eating sweetmeats. When no one is looking, you're eating the sweets, and therefore some of the particles of sugar, they have fallen on the ground, and the ants have come to eat them. Just see, this is very bad. What type of sannyasi? And he would chastise Mahaprabhu like this, and then walk off, in self-righteous indignation. So he developed this mentality because of his disrespect to his guru. I was kind of thinking about playing the verse here. Anyway, yeah, there's this verse, Srimad Bhagavatam, in the chapter 28, the first two verses, very nice. They're kind of instructive verses, honestly. But Krishna's beginning some instructions on Gyan Yoga to Uddhava. And he speaks this verse, so kind of famous. Parasva bhava karmani na prashamsan na garhayat. Vishram ekatmakam pashyan pakritya purushena cha. Very nice verse. It says here, one should neither praise nor criticize the swabhava karmani, the nature, swabhava, and actions of others. Na prakshansan na garhayat. So don't praise, don't criticize the swabhava or karma of others. What should you do? Vishram ekatmakam pashyan. Rather, you should see that there is only one reality. The world is just one reality. It's grounded in God. And pakritya purushena cha. And that these jivas are just interacting with prakriti. That's it. It's all the same. You praise one thing, but that is just jiva interacting with prakriti in one way. And you praise or you criticize another thing, but it's jiva interacting another way. But they're all grounded in this one reality. So this is an instruction that is very important, especially for sannyasis. That's why it's put it in the context of Ramchandra Puri. Sannyasis have to have this strong vision of equality, actually. What is the difference? There's jivas interacting with Prakriti. By mental speculation, we call this vice or virtue, but actually it is just jivas interacting with Prakriti. There are no difference. These are all activities of samsara only. There are no difference between them. Parasva bhava karamani ya prakshansati ninditi. If you praise or criticize the swabhava and karma of others, somehow you cannot resist it, you do that. Sa ashu brashate swarta. Then very quickly, he falls down from his self-interest, such a person. Sa ashu brishate swarta. He very quickly falls down from his self-interest. How? Asati abhiniveshata. By becoming absorbed in asat. You become absorbed in asat, so your mind will be asat, you will attain asat only, samsara, that's it. This is how we're, in the present social world context, we're getting trapped in this particular way. Absorbed in parasva bhava karmani, ya prakshansati ninditi. Simply praising and criticizing others. Now, of these two injunctions, the injunction not to praise is light, and the injunction not to criticize is strict. But how you say, Ramchandra Puri took the reverse. The injunction not to praise, he was very strict, but the injunction not to criticize, he was very light on that. So as a result, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Jaya Krishna, Balaram. Okay, sorry. As a result, he was committing all this aparad. So anyway, this is the second meaning to be taken from the story. Second meaning is this, that she was very attentive to the faults of Indra, but she was not saying that she had the same fault. And in this way, she was degraded in her thinking. So the second meaning. Third meaning to be taken, third meaning is also given from the story. What is the third meaning here? I kind of forgot the third meaning. There was a third meaning here. Hold on, let me pull the verse back up. Oopsies, wrong verse. Yes. So third meaning is that Kashyapa Muni is a great Brahmana. He is son of Lord Brahma. Prajapati is a great Brahmana, great scholar, learned person. But even he came under the sway of his wife, the movements of a woman. So, yeah, Prabhupada and Sri Vishnu also bring this out. Another significant topic is that although Kashyapa Muni was a learned scholar and was advanced in spiritual consciousness, he nonetheless fell a victim to the inducement of his beautiful wife. So I guess this is also going to be derived from the story that we're about to hear. So, okay. In this way, Parikshit Maharaj in his question, it seems, was indicating all these meanings. And Shukadev Goswami could catch that. So he was very satisfied with the question of Parikshit Maharaj. Okay, let's look at the next little passage here briefly. So Sri Shukadev Goswami said, just to help Indra, Lord Vishnu killed the two brothers, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. Because of their being killed, their mother Diti, overwhelmed with lamentation and anger, contemplated as follows. Lord Indra, who is very much fond of sense gratification, has killed the brothers Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu by means of Lord Vishnu. Indriya Rama Ubanam Aklena Hridayam Papam. She's calling, okay, let me read the rest of the verse. Therefore, Indra is cruel, hard-hearted, and sinful. When will I, having killed him, rest with a pacified mind? Did she have the same critique of her own sons? Indriya Rama, she's saying of Indra, he's desiring sense gratification. And as a result of that, he has killed the two brothers, Bhartara Hantara. Ulbanam Aklena Hridayam Papam. He is cruel. His heart is hard, and he is sinful. Only when he is killed, Gatayitwa Shayesukam, then I can rest in happiness, only when he is killed. So she finally fought with Indra. What about her own sons who were tormenting the whole cosmos? No comment about that. No comment that actually justice has been served. Actually, no, she's just very attached. Next verse. When dead, the bodies of all the rulers known as kings and great leaders will be transformed into worms, stool, or ashes. If one enviously kills others for the protection of such a body, does he actually know the true interest of life? Certainly he does not, for if one is envious of others, he surely goes to hell. This is a nice, taken out of context, this is a very nice verse. Everyone is thinking themselves to be this body. So for the body, they're prepared to do all sorts of simple things. But on account of those simple things, what do they get? The body for which they have done a thing leaves them. And the soul gets to go to hell for those simple activities. So is it very intelligent? It's just like, for another example, sometimes given in Shastra also, you may do everything for a lover, but that lover, she is having, or he is having paramour. So you do sinful activity for the lover, but then the lover abandons you for someone else. Is it very intelligent of you? You get to be punished for those transgressions, and they leave you. The person for whom you have done it, they leave you high and dry. Is it very intelligent? So for this body, which we think we are in our ignorance, we're prepared to do all sorts of simple things. But then the body abandons us. It becomes worms and stool. It leaves us aside. But we, the soul, we get to suffer the consequences of the transgressions we've done in that body. We get to go to hell. So this is not very intelligent. So she's commenting like this about all rulers in the past. They were too much attached to their body. But what was the result? Their body became stool only, and they got to suffer the sinful reactions. If one enviously kills others for the protection of such a body, does he actually know the true interests of life? No. Certainly he does not, for if one is envious of other entities, he surely goes to hell. So outside of this context is a very good comment, actually a very nice point. Next verse. Diti thought Indra considers his body eternal, and thus he has become unrestrained or mad. Dhruvam ashasa nasya tasyedam dhruvam ud nada chetasa. So he's considering this body to be eternal. So that is asha sa nasya tasya idam. This body, he is thinking, dhruvam, this is eternal. So for that thinking, unada chetasa, he become crazy. His mind's become unrestrained. Mother Shoshanka Indrasa, who can remove the madness of this Indra? I therefore wish to have a son who can remove Indra's madness. Let me adopt some means to help me in this. So she wants to have some son to remove the madness. What is the madness? That I am this body. And for this body, I'm prepared to do anything. I'll kill your family, also slaughter them for the body. This is all madness. So who can remove this madness? I need to find some means. So then she devises some means. So just read the next two verses. Thinking this way, with a desire for a son to kill Indra, Diti began constantly acting to satisfy Kashyapa by her pleasing behavior. O king, Diti always carried out Kashyapa's orders very faithfully, as he desired. With service, love, humility, and control, with words spoken very sweetly to satisfy her husband, and with smiles and glances at him, Diti attracted his mind and brought it under her control. And the last verse we'll just look at. Although Kashyapa Muni was a learned scholar, he was captivated by Diti's artificial behavior, which brought him under her control. Therefore, he assured his wife that he will fulfill her desires. Such a promise by a husband is not at all astonishing. Why is it not at all astonishing? The next verse explains. In the beginning of creation, Lord Brahma, the father of the living entities of the universe, saw that all the living entities were unattached. In the beginning, Brahma, from his mind, he manifests all Brahmanas. And they were all very detached because there's no woman in the picture. So he needed to increase the population. That is one of his major concerns in the beginning of the creation, as we encountered in the second and third canto. So what does he need to do to inspire creative energy? So that is a woman. A man without a woman will not do anything. Basically, he will live very simply. He will live like a pauper also. You can see it with bachelors, or you can see it with men who aren't married. They can live very simply. And dire straits, practically speaking. If you go to any bachelor's home and you see it, they can live, like, I wouldn't say happily as such, but they can tolerate even dire straight situations. Everything's no aesthetics. They eat the bare minimum just for living. They can live like that, actually. It's quite possible. Men have that capacity. But as soon as women enter into the picture, then immediately they come to life. They become very active. Do this, do that, do the other thing. So this is not very astonishing that a man shall come under the influence of his wife. Adina is saying they have like a total of 5 shirts also. Yeah, no problem. Actually, for most men, this is not a problem. But creative energy is basically creative energy, just metaphysically, even the image that Krishna gives of the creation universe in Bhagavad Gita, he describes himself as basically as the linga, and Prakriti as the yoni, and by the combination of linga and yoni, then there's creation. So that as above, so below, that energy is the creative energy. We can say Rajaguna, but when Prabhupada, when giving the purport, he says, what is Rajaguna? He says Rajaguna means when a man has sex with a woman, basically. He said that is Rajaguna. That is his purport to Rajaguna in chapter 14 Bhagavad Gita. So Brahma generated all Brahmanas. They can live very detached. So you saw how increase population with these fellows. So then it says to increase population, he then created woman from the better half of a man's body. For woman's behavior carries away a man's mind, carries away a man's mind, excuse me. And so the import of the story is that even though Kashyapa Muni is greatly learned, he's a Brahmana, he's a devotee of God also, he's a great personality, still he was carried away by the association of a woman. And so this meaning is to be understood from the story as well. So, oh my dear one, the most powerful sage Kashyapa, being extremely pleased by the mild behavior of his wife Diti, smiled and spoke to her as follows. So we'll hear about that tomorrow. So this I will say here, if anyone wants to say anything extra, I'm looking at the, I can move. Okay. Harishan said, and they're all the same color. 2 shirts, 2 pants, and 1 lungi. Yes. So, okay. So anyone else wants to say anything? Can
you just translate yoni for me?
Yeah, womb.
Womb? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, womb. Or you can say vagina also.
I'd rather say womb. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Lingam is like phallus. Shiva lingam. Or it means sign. Like a sign pointing in a particular direction. Okay, anything else anyone wants to say? Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Jaya Krishna.
Just a quick question. So Diti's lack of self-reflection is indicative of her attachment to her sons, or should we see it as like the Lord had to manifest a certain pastime, and so Diti had to manifest these lower qualities, just like Parikshit Maharaj became hungry and thirsty when he could stay without food and water for 7 days, but in the moment he lost control.
I haven't seen so far any comment of Diti's behavior being informed by like the Leela Shakti of the Lord, some purpose to be accomplished here. So far, it seems Shastra just painting a picture of Diti as being attached to family life. And the result of that attachment is one can become very cruel to those that you don't identify as part of the family. just like the first question of Bhagavad Gita, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do? So they're all coming from the same family, Kuru dynasty. But he's not saying like that. He's saying my sons and then those who are not my sons, the Pandavas, even though they are his nephews. So the nature of attachment works in this particular way. It can make one very cruel. You see only in terms of I and mine and yours and others. And that sets the groundwork for, materialistic life, a life full of envy and anger and cruelty. So that's the only image that we see in the beginning from Shastra about the deity's mentality. But that mentality will be purified by tamasic bhakti. So this is one of the points of this story, it seems, at least according to Prabhupada and Sri Vishwanath. Okay, even such a person, if they embrace bhakti, even for the purpose of killing, they can be purified by that bhakti and be saved. So, yeah, I don't know about any Leela Shakti explanation.
Cool, thank you. And then I guess just one brief reflection. It's always surprising when you read in these stories about these ancient great souls who you expect to just have way more. I mean, they definitely do. Kashypa's like one-time sort of weakness with his wife is probably not indicative of his overall personality and being. You know what I'm saying? Like, I guess we can't really make the comparison to us and people like them. This might have happened once in his life. For us, it would happen like every week or every other day, something, right? That's kind of how we should see it, right?
Yeah, well, Krishna says in the Gita, Sadrisham Cheshate Swasha Pakrita Ganavanapi. That even a man of knowledge cannot resist the actions born of his own nature. Kashyapa Muni is a man. And a man, we have certain, you can say algorithmic programming. When you get the body of a man, Swabhava, basically Swabhava means the imprints of the mind. And those impressions, they run like algorithms, basically. There's a certain algorithm to the mind, the way the mind works. There's a sort of algorithm to that. And women, as a class, they seem to have some sort of inbuilt awareness how to get certain algorithms operative. At least that's how. I mean, for example, the other example was given when the girls are bathing and Shukadeva Goswami walks past them. And they don't bother to cover up or anything because they're like, this guy's situated in Brahma. He doesn't even notice that we're women. And whereas when Vyasa comes, they immediately cover up. And so some comments coming that women seem to have some ability. It seems intrinsic. It's like part of nature. They can make out the mind of a man. And they know how to also generate or activate certain algorithms. And that sort of swabhava. I've seen it in play many times as a dancer and also as a devotee, just how a woman can break a man down. They know they have that power and they're aware of that also. Or at least when they come to be aware of it, they use it for sure. So many comedy strips, everyone knows this actually. This is not a secret thing. This is common knowledge even amongst the secular world. So Kashyapa is a man, his mind, he has a man swabhava. That mind, that swabhava has certain algorithms, and DT knew how to activate that, especially in this pious culture. Pious culture means she speaks sweetly, she follows all his instructions very nicely, she's cooking for him nicely. I like a very proper wife. Then that just breaks him down. Yeah, whatever you want. It happened with Dasharati. So many stories this is going on. They're all great souls. Their greatness is not diminished by these sorts of things in the same way that the brilliance of the moon is not diminished by the spots on it. This verse is quoted in the Narasimha Purana. So their greatness is not diminished because they act according to the Swabhava. Like, how can they do that? Because he was a man. That's what men do. That's how man can be broken down. No matter how great. Ganavanapi, even a man of knowledge. So Kashyapa Muni is a good example here of this verse from Gita 333. Ganavanapi, even a man of knowledge, can't resist acting according to his own nature. So this is, par for the course. Therefore, there's all these injunctions come in play to help protect ourselves from ourselves. And devotees and Gyanis also, they will be a little attentive to those sort of edicts so that they don't get caught up. But even if they get caught up, that is not a diminishing of their glory. That is also to be understood. That, Kashyapa Muni is never presented as like some fallen demonic person or nothing like that. He's just a man. Saying so, when you hear about this stuff happening in our movement, like Prabhupada writes about this in 1217. He said, it is not astonishing. He said, one should not be astonished. This is the verse, Shrimvata Swakata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana. Abhadrani. So there's Abhadra. He wants to describe this Abhadra. So he said there are two Abhadras basically: women or men and money. And then he says one should not be astonished that people fall down because of this thing. It's a very natural thing, actually. In fact, it is astonishing if someone doesn't fall down because of these things. Like, dang, even they had a chance, they didn't take it. That's pretty amazing. That someone shall take the opportunity to eat a cookie is not at all astonishing. So that's why we have to be careful if you go start criticizing, because they could still be glorious despite such challenges that come with just condition. Come with life, with the body and mind. He's a man, so she's a woman. She knew the tattva, how to break them down. They have that intelligence. It's a fact.
Two quick reflections on that. Really helped highlight. One appreciation is that this is a kind of programming that exists in the material world, and it reminds me of how when Krishna goes to rescue Rukmini, Prabhupada writes that this is Krishna showing what a henpecked husband looks like. So of course, in Krishna, not controlled by that energy, but he's showing that this is how the material world works. When a woman innocently reaches out to you for shelter, you cannot help but provide it if you're a pious. So one point is it's nice that this is really just how the material world is set up, and there's certain ways to activate certain programs. And the other nice point that I'm appreciating is this idea of how she did it in a pious way. She spoke sweetly. She went to her husband, whereas in Kali Yuga, those same programmings are activated in an impious way, right?
Yes.
To a man, but then she'll go after another man, or the man is already married to a woman, but then he'll go after some other woman. So they're still activating the same program, we're just doing it in impious ways, and they're saintly and we're not, because, so in that way we're all conditioned by the material energy, but it's just how do you activate the program? Do you do it in a way that's upgrading or downgrading, right?
Yes.
What you brought up. Thank you.
Someone was saying in private, I pray that Krishna doesn't test me too hard. Testing too hard means any test. Any test is too hard to Kali Yuga. Honestly, in proper culture, therefore, they teach you dharma in the very beginning. And for the vast majority of men and women, they could just get them married, like as soon as possible. That was the old culture. One was not expected to show up as like a perfectly situated renunciate, for example. Yes, they're saying, don't show me the cookie jar. I should not know that a cookie jar exists. Otherwise, that will be too hard. Even if I don't see it, if I know the cookie jar is on the table, in other words, there's some prospect, then I'll fail the test. This is a So, and in consideration of this, proper culture just arranges for everyone to be situated properly as soon as possible, so it doesn't become a huge issue. But in Kali Yuga, we are without such protection, and so it always becomes like a crazy sort of embarrassing situation that ends up developing because of not being protected by certain vidis and so on. Well, we heard this already earlier in the third canto when Kashyapa Muni. Yeah, Kashyapa Muni is glorifying. I think it's glorifying Diti actually. Incidentally, I think this comes in chapter maybe. God, I don't remember. I'm gonna say 315, but maybe 317. Anyway, Kashyapa Muni is glorifying how the wife is like a fortress protecting the senses of her husband in so many different ways. And that is proper life. Of course, in ISKCON, we've kind of poo-pooed all over the Grihastha ashram. And although most are Grihasthas in our movement, And we've kind of have a more balanced understanding of renounced life, grihastha life, because that was our beginnings. Like our beginnings was this like strong renounced culture. You know, so many sannyasis, brahmacharis, you had to live in the temple to even be considered a devotee. So that became like the signature of ISKCON. And sort of by cultural osmosis, we haven't really been able to shake that. And so renunciation, good, grihastha life, bad, period. That's the end of it. Even though we may have our other explanations to be more balanced and all of that, the cultural osmosis just gets in you, and that's basically the concept that we have. And so devotees get embarrassed to be married or be in relationships at the proper time. And then inevitably they enter into it, they feel like guilty about it. They go through all this trauma. And then what ends up happening is they start to resent the renounce orders because of that. And it just becomes like this funny, you know, clown show in the name of religion and spirituality. Right. Anyway, Sean was, I love how you say, protect yourself from yourself, as we have tendency to blame that we fell down because of him or her. Yes. No, we have our nature, and there are good parts of that nature, and then there are the other parts. So the other parts, there was a whole system of dharma to protect us from ourselves in that way. But we don't have that, so now it gets a little bit embarrassing. What to do? Gail wants to say something about this.
Yeah, a few things actually. One is, actually, I'm not so clear on how it is a pure devotee, if we're even talking about pure devotees, can fall victim to the algorithms, which I take to be like just automatic reactions to our swabhava.
Yeah, I don't know if Kashyapa Muni is ever presented as a pure devotee. Kashyapa Muni also is something like a post, as are all the mental sons of Brahma, as is Brahma's own position. So I don't know if all the time when we're hearing about some of these personalities, are we hearing about pure devotee versions of them? Otherwise, pure devotee can simply mean one who does only bhakti to make progress. That is also a pure devotee. Because they purely take shelter of bhakti to solve their dilemma. Mm-hmm. So in that case, there can be conditioned souls. And the way they answer their condition is by bhakti yoga only. They don't try other things out. Mm-hmm. And in that sense, they're pure devotees. And, you know, they can be conditioned.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Also, you know, you were talking about the subtleties of Parikshit Maharaj's questions, and I actually kind of missed that, what those subtleties were.
No, the subtleties were the class today. You know, this meaning, that meaning, the other meaning. That's what our commentators were saying. Somehow from the question, I couldn't see it, and I don't think the rest of us could see it, but Shukadev Goswami could appreciate, it seems. Oh, you're asking this thing and that thing. It's indicated in your question. So, Alpam Artavat, although it was very briefly spoken, Artavat, filled with meaning. You mean this, you mean that. So Shukadev Goswami could make out, we couldn't make out.
Yeah, just one last, like, I guess, comment / question is, you were talking about tamasic bhakti, and I thought of Putana. I wonder if she would qualify, because she was nursing.
Her bhakti is qualified as bhakti abhas, a semblance of bhakti, because she had animosity towards Krishna. So Diti does not have animosity towards Vishnu worship, as we'll see. She's worshiping with devotion, but her purpose is to murder. Putana had animosity, but because she's showing up as a devotee, like she really describes herself as a devotee. So her bhakti is called as bhakti abhas, a semblance of devotion. But that bhakti abhas is very powerful. So her own story indicates just the power of bhakti abhas also.
Okay, so although her behavior was tamasic, because her mood toward Krishna was inimical,
Yes.
we wouldn't call that tamasic bhakti. Yeah,
No.
okay. Right.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Those private mess, those parts of ourselves that we need protection from are nowadays promoted as liberal freedom. Yeah, so this is the age of tamas. So tamas means piety is taken as impiety, and impiety is taken as piety. It's an exact reversal of the proper way of being. So this is par for the course. If we get proper knowledge, then we can understand with a little humility, like, nah, I got these are some demons. I gotta keep them in check, and I should try to live a proper life. But if you don't have, the mercy, practically in this age of Kali, if you don't have mercy of Vaishnava, then who knows anything? Honestly, so much speculation on the internet, and everyone has access to it all the time. So we will perish if not for the mercy of Vaishnavas. Okay, so we can pause here and try to continue the story tomorrow. Thank you all very much. Tatsat. Srila Prabhupada ki Jaya. Go Pranandi. Hari Hari Bolo. Hari Hari Bolo.
Thanks, Prabhu.